Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of the Unlaced podcast. If you are new here, I thank you. Please give us a like and subscribe. It's how we grow. If you have come back, you know I love you very much. So thank you for coming back to the show. We appreciate it. It's been a big year, and last week we obviously had UFC fighter Jack Jenkins on, who's just made the UFC from cutting Peruvian guy's eye open in an absolute bloodbath in Las Vegas when he won that fight, and Dana White gave him a contract to the UFC. He's going to be fighting in Perth in February. Braden, we're probably going to get over for that, aren't we? We have to watch him. But anyway, moving into this show, more importantly, this is the second time on the show for one of the busiest ladies in Melbourne, Jacqui Lauder, without question. You are.
Except you have to give me credit this time. It did not take 41 emails
Oh, yeah.
to actually get me on. I feel really proud of myself that I'm on much quicker this time.
You were the hardest guest I've ever had to get on the first time. Yeah, we had a 41 email trail.
We did.
Just to book in a podcast.
But this time it was literally a text.
Yeah.
And I was on it.
Yeah, straight away.
So I've improved.
Do you know what, though? Because the reason why I did want to get you back on, and thank you to all the listeners out there that have been like giving us feedback and sharing it, but a lot of people have been loving like the discussions around like mental health and all these topics, and listening to people who are going through tough times, what they do. And it's like, well, people don't know who I know, but Jacqui Lauder.
Contacts.
Oh, I've got some contracts. But do you think you get the credit you deserve in your space? Because you are like kind of like this silent hero in society.
I don't really see it that way. Like, it's always really nice when people give you feedback or they say that you're a really important part of their journey. For me, it's actually just the sitting back and watching them achieve. Like, I love the fact that I'm in the background because I think the athletes are the star of the show and their coaches and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really see it as do you get the credit or not. The players, the athletes that you work with, they'll always say thank you. And so you know that they appreciate the role that you play for them. So that's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, because I think for those that don't know, if you haven't seen the first episode with Jacqui, go back because we do talk a little bit more about her day-to-day roles and particularly the impact she's making with sort of the modern-day athlete and so forth. But for those just to cover that now, what are some of the areas you're covering? Are you still doing the same? Or have you added more to your arsenal of the sporting teams and the people that you are working with?
So I'm still doing a lot of clinic hours where I see individual athletes, specialise a lot in clinical stuff like eating disorders, chronic fatigue. The last 3 years I've done a heap of work in the ADHD space, which is really huge because it's a really untapped area for adult ADHD, but particularly with athletes and active people. So that's been for me a really interesting area to go into, and I'm getting lots more athletes and individuals come through. And then I'm still with Collingwood, so netball program, AFLW, which I will be stepping away from at the end of this season, just because my role within the men's program has been bigger and that now. So it's only fair to the athletes to make sure they all have their own person. And then I'm still with Melbourne Storm as well. So I'm busy.
So that's why I said you're the busiest lady in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Do you find across the different codes that the athletes share similar challenges, or is it different subjected to the sport?
It's completely similar in terms of they're all elite at what they do. They all want to be the best. They all have personal lives as well. So there's no possible way you can just deal with the sporting side. You have to deal with all the clinical and the personal issues. But that's what I love about it is that like my job's such a privilege because I get to develop a real relationship with these humans and you be a really big part of their life, and they tell you stuff they don't tell anybody else, but that has a huge responsibility that comes with that to, it is hard sometimes.
How do you deal with that? Like just Karen, like you are the biggest vault ever.
Yeah.
If I'm ever going to put a dead body in a ditch, I know the one person I will tell because you hold the most secrets in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's
like client confidential, right? You can't, like you have to in a sense.
Yeah, that's our job. But I think also it's, like I said, it's a real privilege, but I think it's such an important role to play because it allows athletes to then go out and compete. It allows people to go and get on with their day. And so if you can do that for somebody, but it's sometimes it's really heartbreaking too when you know what people are going through. And then it's really frustrating. For me, probably the most challenging part is in the public space, because I have a lot of athletes that are quite high profile that you work with. And when people get it so wrong about that person or they misreport or don't do their facts, the damage that they do behind the scenes, that's what infuriates me. Is these people are humans. They might be in the public domain for what they do, but they're trying to also, most of them are under the age of 30. Yeah. So they're also trying to figure out who they are as a person. And that's my job. I think a big part of our job in sport, whether it's coaches, a psychologist, whatever, is at the end of the day, if these guys leave their sport a better human, they understand themselves, they feel valued as a person, not just their sporting achievements, then I feel like we've done our role.
Yeah.
But that's super hard when, they breathe in the wrong direction and someone's got a comment on it.
Yeah.
Like that's what frustrates me probably the most, because you see what it does to them their families.
I think we said it last time, but even more so now. I mean, you'd be getting pay rises more off because of the media storm that comes. It's like that we need more Jacqui Lowders in the game because the scrutiny
you'd like
around.
to think so.
Yeah, well, but like that, they're the reason why you're so profound in a sport, in a sense, not just because you need athlete performance, but addedly now it's like how do you, there's some of these guys like 18, 19, 20, 21, and then they're like on the front page for things that every kid their age is doing.
Yeah, and that's where I think the education really now needs to come in. Is we talk a lot about the terminology of mental health, and this is across the board now. This isn't just athletes. The terminology of mental health is thrown out there. The understanding of mental health versus mental illness versus the management of that, the accommodations you need to make for that is so poor, I think. So our awareness is better, but our education and our understanding, there's a huge gap that we need to now really fill.
Can you define like mental health to me? Because everyone throws that around like quite a bit. And I don't know if it's ever been used out of context in certain things, but it's quite a powerful word, I think, when people are really sort of having mental health issues.
Yep.
So how would you like frame it and define it in your language?
So your mental health is no different to your day-to-day physical health, right? So you either take care of your physical health or you don't, right? So you might have a sore leg or you've got a bad back or you've got some other ailments that you need to make sure on a day-to-day basis you take care of. Mental health is the same. What's my day-to-day mood like? How am I managing myself? How am I managing my stress levels? It's that sort of stuff. Then you go into physical illness where someone might have diabetes, they might have heart conditions, those sort of things. Mental health's the same. So they may have some sort of mental illness, like it might be a bipolar or it might be a schizophrenia where we require medication. It's something that they have not brought on themselves. Their environment, their day-to-day may not be helping them manage their condition. So mental illness is where we'll have medication involved. If it's disabilities in terms of learning difficulties, processing things, neurodevelopmental things, that's where you go, that's how that person was born. So that's where the frustration is they think, mental health and mental illness, people get it confused, but they misuse it. But every single human being has mental health. I find it really interesting in so many of our sports that we have Indigenous round, which is awesome. We have Pride round, which is awesome, but there's no mental health round. 100% of the community has we all have mental health. How is there no mental health round?
Yeah.
I find that astounding.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
fly the flag.
Yeah.
Maybe we're breaking it here.
Yeah, maybe we're breaking it here. We're pushing. We'll send this podcast to the right people.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's what it is. No one is immune from mental health. It's how you manage yourself on a day-to-day basis that then contributes to that.
Right. Now, this is a little bit of a twist to that because obviously would you say you're a psychologist or sports psychologist first?
Yeah, so that's a really good line, I guess. So after you've done all your main training, everyone comes out after 6 years, minimum 6 years full-time, you'll come out as a psychologist, so your general psychology. But then if you want to get a specialty area as sport and exercise psychologist, clinical psychologist, child developmental whatever it is, you then go on and do roughly another 2 years where you work under a supervisor with that specialty, and you've got to have supervision sessions and do your training in that to get your specialty title. So I'm a psychologist and my area of specialty is sport and exercise, but then you may then pick another thing. Like I said, for me, recently it's been the ADHD in the last few years, but it's eating disorders I've specialised in for a long time. So there's certain illnesses and conditions that various practitioners will specialise in, and they've done the hard yards in that too.
Right, because the way I was framing it before as well to someone I was speaking to today, because I was speaking about you as like a sports psychologist and like, why are they so important to athletes? I was like, well, because this person played sport. I was like, well, think of you. What's your best performance you could do?
Yep.
It's like, okay, yeah. So why don't you do that every single time you step on the field? And they're like, oh, yeah, all right, yeah. Well, I'm like, yeah, it's probably your freaking brain because your body can. If you're not injured, you should be able to play the same level of it. But it's interesting how like that's why coaches and like obviously senior people in sport love consistent players because it's almost the hardest thing to do.
It's the hardest thing to get
because you're controlling up here as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
But if you want to get consistent with your hitting a tennis ball, right, you practice over and over and over. It's amazing in sport, the number of people that come and see you and they're like, so I leave next week for world champs and I just need to understand my anxiety and how I prepare for matches. I'm like, so in a week, I'm just going to nail it and give you everything you need and you're going to come back a world champion, and that's going to be totally because of me. 100%.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, that's not happening.
Yeah.
You have to practice your mental skills. So this is why now we get such young athletes come through because they're starting to understand that we have a role, and it's not a bad thing now to go and see a psychologist.
How young are we talking here?
My youngest person I've probably ever seen. Well, I told you last time on the podcast about that soccer kid who was 2.5.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's got to be a...
But I think probably the youngest athlete I've had that came purely to improve their sport was 8 years old.
What?
Yeah, this kid was awesome. One of my favourites.
But is that like...
Table tennis player. He was the cutest little thing.
Why?
His feet did not even touch the ground from my couch. It was the best.
Surely we're worrying about getting the feet touching the ground before we're going in to see the best sports psych in the country.
Yeah, he was awesome. But yeah, so that's the young. But I get a lot of like 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, really common now.
Why has that become so common? Because when I was 10, 11 and 12, I don't think I knew anyone going down that path. If they were, might not been because of sport, for example.
Well, I think professional sports now associate themselves with a sports psych. Like, it's not embarrassing to have us on staff anymore.
Yeah.
So your younger kids.
It was actually 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm very big in this, but like that whole headspace now. But at the AAS, when I was there 10 years ago, I had access to 2 sports psych every day, every hour, and I never went once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was like, what the fuck do I need to go to them for?
Yeah. Well, also too, because there was always they're going to tell the coach. Like, that's our job, is they think we're going to tell the coach everything, which we're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will talk to the coach with the permission of the athlete, but I think now younger kids are seeing the elite in their sport actually use the sport psych and talk about it openly. There's more media articles, like we're more prominent. People know about us more. So therefore, it's just like, I'm going to see the physio. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go see Jacqui or whichever sports psych they're seeing or psychologist that they're seeing. So now it's okay to go and see somebody and there's nothing wrong with you. That's not a weakness. That's actually now seen as a strength and just another part of your training program. So, so we're cool all of a sudden.
I know,
I'm acceptable now.
You've timed your run
I'm acceptable. You're allowed to be seen with me. You don't have to run.
I know, I'm coming to your house for barbecues now. 10 years ago, I couldn't go near them.
I have a social life now because people are not embarrassed to be next to me.
Yeah. What, in your opinion, makes a great psychologist?
I reckon the number one thing is that you have an understanding. I'm not there to make you better just because I'm part of that process. I think it's when you actually genuinely just go, I love being a small part of your journey.
Yeah. But
I've got some skills that I can help upskill you on that you can then go and implement. So it's about making sure it's client-centered first.
Right.
And I also think for me, it's very much about learning. Like, I have always reading something, got my head in a book. Like, I love learning new things. And because this space now has just exploded so much and you understand more and more about what makes a human tick.
Yeah.
So I think it's a passion, but that's probably the same as any industry you go into.
Yeah,
what makes a good lawyer is someone who's really passionate about what they do.
Okay.
But it's got to be that people focus.
Yeah, okay. People-centric.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking as well, just on that aspect. Like, is there a way for certain individuals to identify a good psychologist for them to speak to? Like, or does it not really matter?
Look, I think it's a bit hit and miss like pretty much everyone. You can go and see a doctor and, I don't like that. I didn't feel comfortable with that doctor. They were too clinical, but I don't think they heard me.
Yeah.
So a psych is the same, is you've got to find that right click and that right personality. And I'm not going to be the right person for everybody, but somebody else is. And I think that as any medical practitioner, if you can recognise and say, hey, you know what, I think I can probably help you, but I reckon there's someone who's much more skilled than me in this area. Like if, you know,
so you would push them or like push them to that person type thing. Yeah.
I've got a colleague who is, their space is, you know, racing and eventing and all that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
That's how they've grown up. That's how they've competed. They're a sports, like they're awesome at what they do. That's the best person for that jockey to go and see, or someone else who's amazing and has grown up with cricket. Like I can help with some skills, but depending on where their need is, I have no issue forwarding someone on and going, I reckon somebody else is actually going to be the perfect fit for you. See how you go. So you never kick them out, but when you recognise that, hey, I think this might need more specialty than me, refer them on. That's a sign of a good practitioner. I'm not keeping the client because that's my benefit.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing what's in the best interest of the client. Every single time, best piece of advice I got given was if you ask yourself when you've maybe shared something personal or you've given somebody some advice, was that in the best interest of my client and their growth and development? If the answer is yes, I'm really comfortable with what I've told them.
Right.
If the answer is no, you've got to check yourself and just go, well, hang on, why am I doing that? That's not what I'm here for.
So you've obviously, it was just like you're playing poker at times in a sense.
Yeah,
like
very much.
how am I going to play this hand in the best interest of the person I'm playing against type thing?
And sometimes the best thing you can do is you make yourself relatable. Like I think you've got to make yourself relatable. Thinking, okay, if you come in and talk to me, you want to be able to just have a chat, right? Because you're going to be the most open to learning when you feel comfortable with the person you're sitting with. So if I can make somebody feel really comfortable, I can find common ground with them. Like what do we have in common? We might know somebody in common. We might follow the same footy team. We might like the same TV show, or we're into the same music. Like I like to find out about the person because then that information is really helpful when they're struggling. That can help me put a good strategy together for them. Like, oh, okay, so you might have certain music that you just play and go, come on, let's go for a walk. Or you talk about, you know, was on the motorbike circuit for a long time, so I've got someone who's really into motorbikes. I can talk to them about that. I don't look like the bike chick. This is the best part.
You've got it.
Yeah, but I've got that lingo because that's where I spent so much time. So you're like, oh my God, did you see the Supercross racing that was here the other week?
Yeah.
Like, how good was that, or whatever it is. Yeah. So you can talk to them about something that's relatable, and all of a sudden they're relaxed and they're happy to talk to you about stuff because there's a trust there.
Right. Understood. Now that's funny because a lot of people put a lot of trust in me in this space, which is the irony. But thank you to everyone that's been tuning into particularly some of this content. And a lot of people shared a lot of feedback or questions they wanted to throw at you, which we are going to filter through throughout this. But for anyone that is listening and feeling like they need to talk to someone or get something off their chest, get that help, but they're like a little bit concerned or worried, what would be some advice you can give them to kind of take that leap?
So I think if you're not someone who normally talks to anybody, start with someone who's close to you that you feel comfortable with and trust. And it doesn't have to be a big conversation. It might just be, hey, just letting you know, I'm just struggling a bit at the moment. Don't really want to talk about it, but I'm just letting you know I'm struggling. So then if you're my mate and I've just told you that today, you might send me a message tomorrow and say, hey, just checking in and seeing how you're doing. Like, or if you're doing something that you might go, oh, we have that in common, you might just give me a call and say, hey, I'm just going to go see this movie. Do you want to come? Right. So it's just having that awareness. So that's an easy place to start for people. You've obviously got, you know, some of the helplines and those sort of organisations that you can ring where you stay anonymous, but you've got someone to talk to. And that can be great for in the moment to get you through a tough time if you're not quite ready to go and see somebody. And then if you really think, you know what, I need to probably go and see somebody a bit more regularly and just nut a few things out, then jump on the Australian Psychological Society website and there's a find a psychologist section. You can do the same thing to find a psychiatrist. You can Google like psychologist in East Melbourne and names will come up, or ask somebody if you know somebody who goes and sees a psychologist. Like, do you mind if I get the name of that person, however you felt? Is there anyone else at their practice if you don't want to see the same person your friend sees? So there's plenty of ways to do it. And then even if it's go to your local council website, there's lots of support groups like Men's Shed. So find out where all the Men's Shed, and Men's Shed isn't men sitting around just sharing all their feelings. Sometimes it might be, but each of those branches runs really differently. So sometimes they'll just sit around and have a beer. Some of them will do woodwork and make things. Sometimes it's just
masculine.
sometimes it's just watch the footy together.
Yeah.
So each
Build
unit,
a bunch of shit and watch footy.
correct. Yep. Each unit runs a little bit differently. So go to 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
Similar to if you went to Alcoholics Anonymous, if you go to any of those groups, they all run a little bit differently, same principles, but that particular group or the person who leads that group might be the most comfortable for you. So don't give up if you don't find that person straight up. Don't be patient with them.
Right. You just touched on just some, like the sort of males in that space. And I think one of the biggest clips we've ever had on TikTok was with a guy, Chocks Chat, this comedian. He talked about like how it was normalized by his boss to like go see someone and get help. And we started speaking about like the stigma of, I guess, males' mental health and so forth. Why do you think it is? And the only reason why I say this is because like the suicide rates of males are significantly higher.
Correct.
Like the statistics around that is actually really frightening.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's harder for males to pick up the phone and speak to their mates and say stuff like that?
I think part of it is their own self-expectations, is that they think they're supposed to be the stronger person in a relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship, in a family, that they're not supposed to have problems. That's so societal, I guess, expectations from years and years ago. That's going to take a long time to break. I think there's cultural things in there as well, depending on how you grew up and what your culture is, that you just get on with things. But everyone's a human being. I don't care what your culture is, what your color is, what your religion is, what your background is. Every single person's a human being we all have issues. We all have things that it's nice to get a second opinion on. But I think now when you see, and this is where the space of celebrities and high-profile athletes, when they come out and they're really open about their mental health, one, that's a massive thing for them to do, but massive because they're sharing their personal life a little bit and they're opening themselves potentially for scrutiny. But the other side is, if that footballer sees somebody, then I can go and see somebody. So they're the ones that are really opening the gates for everyone else to go, this is acceptable now. And that probably goes back to your first question, when an athlete might give us credit or mention us, the thing I love about that the most is not that, people know who I am. I couldn't give a crap about that. What I care about is going, great, that's now gone, people know this person sees somebody and they've just made it okay because they've been public about it. So I think that's going to help. But
it becomes a bit more cool, or
yeah. But I think too, even the old women are more emotional than men. No, they're not. They express it definitely more openly.
Yeah.
One, because society says that's okay and we've never had to worry about it too much. And sometimes that's misinterpreted over the top or whatever. But men have feelings as well. Humans have feelings. I just think women are wired to talk more. And so you hear about our feelings a lot more. Guys have them. They just don't express it the same way. They often just hold it in.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because like I was actually really shocked when I saw the suicide rates. Yeah, it's like ridiculous.
Yeah. And country males particularly.
Yeah.
Because they're isolated
rural
so
sort
much.
Of, correct.
18 to 24 is your big age group.
What would be some like basic fundamentals for those that live upstairs a lot, like to kickstart their own therapy, like little things to become a bit more conscious or like centered with themselves to rationalize thoughts, rationalize just everything and come back to earth a bit?
Yeah, so sometimes I think just writing a few things down, it doesn't have to be like a Dear Diary.
Yeah.
But sometimes just writing things down.
What does that actually do when you put pen to paper? Because it does do something.
It gets it out. So your brain, I always explain it to people and say your brain's like a bucket.
Yeah.
Right? It fills up because we've got so much stuff going on. If you don't empty the bucket, it overflows. Then you don't know where – that's chaos then. You don't know where shit's gone and what's leaking out, and you can't put your fingers in enough holes because there's too much.
It almost
coming
seems
out.
so simple.
Yes,
Like,
it
do you know
is.
what I mean? Just like doing that actually relieves tension. I used to think like, there's no way. But I do it a little bit now and I'm like, I think it does help.
And you don't have to format it. It doesn't, like I said, I think too many people think about that as, dear diary. If you want to write it that way, that's perfectly fine. But sometimes it can just be a whole page full of swear words or just random words that are just like pissed off, angry, upset, whatever. Getting it out is emptying the bucket. But the other benefit to it is when you record something regularly, you see your patterns and you're like, man, I've been thinking about this for months now.
Yeah.
So that can make you accountable to yourself.
Right. Okay.
And it's the safest way to do it if you've never seen somebody or you're not sure how to see somebody.
Right.
It's the safest way to do it because you can rip it up, throw it away, chuck it in the fire. You've still got it out.
Yeah.
So that's really beneficial. So I think that's the easy part. I think exercise is huge for your brain because it releases dopamine. Dopamine's your motivation chemical. But if you increase your exercise, you decrease your cortisol, which is your stress chemical. Number one thing that's going to decrease anxiety and stress is movement. So start walking, start just doing a little bit. It might be 10 minutes a day where you walk up and down the street if you feel a little bit stressed. You know where you see people rocking back and forth? What they're doing is they're soothing themselves. That movement is increasing that dopamine a little bit, decreasing that cortisol.
Right.
Yeah, so all those sort of things are really helpful for people. Putting music on, anything that has a really strong bass beat will increase your heart rate. So put something on that's really easy to listen to.
Like meditation, even meditation music and stuff like that? Or just actual like music?
Music first, just stuff that's easy for you to listen to and that you enjoy. Have it on in the background while you're doing the cleaning or while you're cooking or whatever it is. Your brain gets into those rhythms. So there's a whole line of music, Baby Mozart.
Okay.
And the reason they call it Baby Mozart is because Mozart's music has been found to have the most therapeutic rhythms.
Really?
Yeah, so babies tune into it and it's very calming for them. So this is why I think too more people now listen to classical music and instrumental music because then it's just really nice, calm rhythms and you just find you potter around and it just naturally relaxes you.
That's fascinating.
Yep. The other one is the candle industry's gone gangbusters, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So
the mood setter, the ambient setter.
Yeah, yeah. So I always will have candles or like diffusers or have a really nice scent in the room. When you smell a scent that you like, it relaxes you.
Right.
So it's really great if you're going to bed, put a candle on half an hour before you go to bed. That actually, when you lay down, you're smelling a scent that you like. You walk into a room and you're like, oh, this smells really nice. You really relax. You don't walk in and go, this smells really nice, like really angry.
Yeah.
You all of a sudden say it really calmly.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize you're doing it.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's all those really little. Yeah.
There's a formula there.
It's all those really little things that people can do before they even have to think about going and speaking to somebody.
Correct.
And if that doesn't work, then that's where you might go, okay, I probably need to speak to somebody. But even after a day at work, like there is some research around this. When you get home, get changed straight away. You know, when you used to come home from school, mum and dad would go, get out of your school uniform.
Yeah.
Right? That was more so that they didn't have to iron it the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Or it didn't end up on the floor. But when you change your clothes and you get into something more comfortable, that part of your day is done. You actually feel more relaxed.
Right.
That changes your mood.
Okay. Are you big on routine, especially when you're so close to the high-performing athletes?
Yeah.
Because it's funny for me, like we have obviously a lot of friends in this space and like when they get around this point in pre-season of various sports, they just like, it makes me laugh like, fuck, I don't know what to do.
Yep.
And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what to do? Like, enjoy it.
Well, they've never had to manage their time because it's done for them.
Enjoy it. Like they can, but they can't because they feel like I need to do something all the time.
Human beings like structure because it makes us feel in control.
Do you think that helps though the average day person to have routine though, like to get set in their ways? Because
you've got to have, you can have a baseline routine, but you've got to have also the ability to adapt and be flexible. Okay. Because life changes all the time. So if you're so rigid that it becomes stressful not to do your routine, then we're sort of heading into a different space.
Right.
But if you've got a basic routine, like most people will have a morning routine sometimes without realizing it. Like, oh yeah, I get up, I get dressed, or where I get up, I go have a shower, then I have breakfast, then I get dressed, then I leave, and that's all done in the space of half an hour. And they're like, oh, yeah, I have a routine. It wasn't something they set. They've just fallen into it, right? We can have eating routines that are exactly the same, is they have the same thing for breakfast every day. We go to the same cafe every day to get our coffee because we like the fact that the person there knows our name and has our coffee already ready for us because they know our order, right? Humans love routine because it makes us feel safe and it makes us feel in control. So there's an element you have to, I think, is hugely beneficial. Chaos, humans not great at chaos.
Yeah. That's it. What about getting up at the same time every day? Is that important or not really to you? I'm terrible at that.
Yeah, getting up within the same hour each day is really helpful because your body stays in the same rhythms. If I get up 4 hours later tomorrow, all my food patterns, so my energy levels, all of that is out. My brain functioning, I'm 4 hours behind. So I think having roughly the same get up time. If you've got to sleep in, I always say to people, try not to sleep in more than about 90 minutes past your normal get up time. So you basically keep your body in the same rhythms.
Right.
Yeah, that's where Monday-itis comes from because weekends, people would sleep 6 hours longer than what they normally do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, okay, but now everything's back.
Got you.
Then it takes you Monday, Tuesday. By Wednesday, you're halfway through your week. Oh, I feel good. Then Thursday, you're fatigued because you've done 3 days of work.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So Wednesday's a great day.
Yeah, the hump
Outside of that, we're screwed.
Yeah, we're stuffed. Yeah. I've always wanted to ask you as well because I'm very outcome driven and I've never been a lover of the process. And this can be relatable. This was actually one from someone on the poll I did as well.
Yep.
And I don't know if they're referencing relationships or careers and stuff, but for someone that's, wants to let go of the outcome essentially and focus on the process of whatever it may be, what would be some sound advice that they could have to start doing that? Because I am actually terrible at that as well.
Well, you can't get your outcome without a process.
Okay.
So you need to understand that first.
You make me sound dumb very quickly.
You can't get your outcome unless you've done the steps beforehand.
Yeah.
So then you've got to break down your steps into things that someone feels is manageable, right? So the bigger the goal, the longer the goal, right? So if they're saying in the next 12 months, I want to do this, okay, we're breaking this down to monthly, smaller outcomes. And then what do we need to do within that month to give us the best chance of achieving that outcome? So the thing that a process does is it enables you to get closer, gives you a higher chance of your outcome. No guarantee, but it gives you the best chance, which means then you don't have regret.
Right.
You can't sit here and whinge if you didn't get an outcome, if you didn't create a process, and then if you didn't stick to that process as well. Whereas if I get to the end and I don't get the outcome I want, one, I guarantee you I got 100% closer than what I would have with no process. But also I'll be disappointed in the outcome, but I won't be disappointed in myself. That's the big difference is so then I can move forward to the next thing and trust, okay, I know how to do this. I know where to tweak this and how to get closer. The problem with the process is people are impatient.
Yeah.
We're now in a society of convenience.
Yeah.
We want everything. We're going to drive through and get drive-through liposuction soon, right? Hook me up, suck it out. Thanks very much. I'll go to work now, right? That's kind of where we're headed with things. So people are so impatient because they haven't learned how to work at things. You think back when the Depression was on and most of our grandparents and all that, there was no weekend shopping. There was no late night shopping. They had to get everything and be organised. And then over the weekend, things were in their fridge and in their freezer and whatever it is. And they had to wait till Monday morning to be able to go to the bank or do things. They had to wait in lines more often than we do. Yep. It taught them patience. It taught them process. We lack that now, but process is planning and people get frustrated with the plan. They just want to get going. And that's where all those mindfulness and all those sort of things can really help because then they're a bit more patient with themselves. You've got to learn how to talk yourself through it. Like you're your own worst enemy. The dialogue in most people's head, I always say to people, think about it this way. Write down everything that you say to yourself that you would never say to someone else. Yeah.
That's
fucking scary list.
That is
a scary list. And then you say to people, right, so why would you never say those things to someone else?
Okay.
And they're like, well, that's really mean or that's not going to help them. I'm like, oh, okay. What's that doing for you? And they're like, yeah, that's making me feel like shit and it's not helping. I'm like, okay, so we're on the same page. Right. So let's now control our dialogue. You don't have to be over the top positive. You have to be constructive.
Okay.
Right? There's no point in you saying, I'm never going to be able to do that. Okay, well, I'm not going to guarantee you will either. But I'll tell you what, how about we break it down? And I'm like, what do you think it's going to take to do that? Let's break all the components of that result, break it down. Okay, where do we start?
Yeah.
Let's do this part first, make it a bit of fun, change up their environment, go from there.
I also think because there's probably been quite a few things where I've been outcome driven, but when I've actually loved something, I don't even almost look at the outcome.
Correct.
I live in the process, like podcasting or playing soccer.
Yep.
So when coming back to that question, I think you have to love whatever it is you want that outcome to be.
Absolutely.
Or else you're not going to enjoy it. And then is it really worth it?
Yeah. And that comes back to when you said before, for me, I love my job. I'm passionate I love seeing someone evolve. Yeah. I love seeing them learn about themselves and realize, oh my God, I can actually do this stuff. There's really cool parts of me. That part is amazing. And I'm passionate about seeing that happen. So when they come in and people sit down and they're like, so I just need to be able to do this. I'm like, okay, cool. What's my role? And they're like, oh. I'm like, so you know how to do that, right? And they're like, no, that's your job. Right. Oh, you're going to help me do that. Okay, cool. I actually forget what they've probably first told me. I'm just like, oh, how was this week? What'd you do? How'd you cope with this? My whole day is process. Okay. Yeah. So when you get to see in sport, you actually get to see an outcome.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, for me, it helps balance out that clinical stuff versus that real high achieving component as well.
Because, this is one of the things that's fascinating to me. And it was actually another question that was brought up, but reaching that sort of elite performance, high performance, or that outcome that a player knows they can do, but they're not consistent with it every week. Yep. How do you help them bridge that gap to try and be as consistent as possible or play 8 or 9 out of 10 every week that they know that they're capable of?
So part of it is what we've just said in terms of routines.
Okay. So you'll take them back, strip it back to what do you normally do? What's your process?
So if we have a routine and something goes wrong, I'm going to be able to go back and go, well, it's not these things because we do this every week and we've had success. So it actually makes it easier for me to find the problem. If we do something really well, I'm going to go, yep, that's because we're consistent and we do that. So I've got to keep track of that sort of stuff. So it's then being able to break it all down and just go, okay, let's measure as much stuff as we can. So sports science, we literally know how many breaths someone takes, how many heartbeats they have, how many farts they have in a day. We know so much physiologically.
Yeah.
We can't possibly learn any more from that. But psychologically and routines in that, we record so little. Now it's about going, this is really valuable information because it allows me to see your patterns. It allows me to see, oh, we changed that this week. How was that? Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. Don't change everything in one go. Let's try this for the next 3 weeks. Works, great, we'll stick to it. Doesn't work, we'll change it up. So to get to that high performance, you've got to be really realistic with your goal setting.
Yeah.
You've really got to look at your timeframes, and I've really got to understand who's in front of me as my starting point.
Right.
Because somebody's understanding of, okay, so you come to me and you're a 17-year-old and you want to be drafted in whatever sport, soccer, football, whatever. And I'm like, well, what do you think you need to do? Oh, that's what this person does. No, that's what you see. What do you think they do? So then when you hear, and this is where I think podcasting has played such a big role, because you hear what an athlete does week in, week out. You hear what they struggle with. The top athletes, and you know this, the top athletes in the world, they make mistakes.
Yeah.
Funnily enough. Roger Federer hits a ball into the net sometimes, but the top basketballers, they miss shots, right?
Yep.
They pass it to the wrong person.
Yep.
Sometimes a runner goes the wrong way. They're on a trail run or whatever it is and they take a wrong turn or they haven't eaten something properly. They're not perfect. So I think this is where the podcasting comes in, is it teaches people and listen to someone's story. Stories are invaluable because it really gives you an insight into process and time frames and patience and all that. Nobody is the top at what they do, whether that's an athlete or anything else, without having done all the hard yards.
Yeah, it's literally given everything.
Every single thing.
Almost every day.
I had a student come to me once and they're like, So I want to do what you do, but do I have to go to uni for that long?
How do I click a button?
And I'm like, so I think we should probably look at a new career.
Yeah, correct.
Yep. Either
Correct.
don't go to uni, but yeah, there's no way around it.
Well, I almost thought you had a new career this year because I started seeing you lining up on the bench for the Pies.
I was.
And I'm like, wait a second. Is
Last
that
year as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on there? And then I actually went to a few games and I'd see players come off the bench and they'd be catching a breath and taking a walk and you'd be with them and I'd just see you like talking to them.
Yeah.
So break this down for me, because I feel like this might be country nationwide first, right? Like I'm not going to say world first, but in the AFL, I don't think there's many sports psychs doing that. There was
one a few, like many years ago, Phil Jauncey was at the Brisbane Lions and I know he walked the boundary with them and that sometimes. But yeah, for me, that's like, it makes complete sense for me to be doing this.
It makes complete sense as soon as I saw it too, because I'm like, oh my God.
We manage things in the moment.
Yeah.
Players come off if they're frustrated. I know their routines pretty well. Like I've learnt them now over a couple of years. So, I can tell if that player goes and sits there, he don't want to talk to anybody. Like, so let's probably give him a bit of space. It's that person needs 30 seconds. No, that person will want the phone straight away. Sometimes it's like, grab your bottle, go for a walk. Like, I don't want to talk to you right now. Or they'll be like, can you come? Sometimes my role is literally just to listen.
Right.
So that they can just vent and get out whatever their thinking is. And then I'm like, do you need me to do anything here or are we good? And they're like, nope, I feel better. I've just got it out.
So would it be a bit more selective on them as when they want to utilize you?
It's their choice.
So it's purely their choice.
It's purely their choice. So there's a couple of ways it works. Sometimes, and this year it's been good because we've had Fly on the bench with us.
Yeah.
So he and I can communicate either just by looking at each other or saying something and pick up. If someone just seems a bit off, then I can quickly get down, manage them in terms of, okay, what are your strengths? What have we been working on? So it's because they're emotional and they've got adrenaline going. There's so much happening. I'm the calm head. I don't have to go out there and get hit. I don't have to have crowd having a crack at me, whatever it is. So I'm calm as. So I can have clear thinking because I don't have the emotion and that. Whereas they have the emotion, so you can do some of that thinking. So it's managing the moments in the moment. It's the best.
It's incredible.
It's so helpful.
Whose decision was that? So did you ever kind of push that as like, this might be a good narrative? Because it's such a high interchange game.
Yeah.
Like for instance, with maybe cricket where they stay on the field for 5 days, you might not be able to chat to the batsman in the middle, maybe at a drinks break or something. But soccer you couldn't, but footy and basketball.
You can.
You can.
Yeah. So that was pretty much driven by the players. So when I first went down and I'd been with them for a little bit and then they started obviously getting into the season. So pre-season was pretty much finished. And then they just sort of said, the players want you on the bench so that they can actually talk to you and use you in the moment.
So it came from the players?
So it originally came from the players.
Wow.
And now it's just become, that's kind of just how it works.
It's the norm.
And yeah, and it really allows me to make notes to then follow up with certain things. I hear conversations. I can hear their self-dialogue. Like if they're coming in, if they're frustrated, I can pick up stuff that they don't. But then when you talk to them, you go back and look at the footage and you're like, were you aware of this? So it really allows us to get right into the nitty-gritty. I feel like it's giving me the best opportunity to do my job at the highest level. And I feel like the players are benefiting.
That is literally at the highest level.
Yeah.
Like you are literally 1 meter from getting tackled.
Yeah. But it's also you get a much better sense of, how frantic it can be on the bench or how calm it can be on the bench or, I can hear the messages coming down from the box and I'm like, I just want to change that language a little bit. Sometimes it's giving feedback to the coaches in those breaks and just saying, hey, just have an awareness of this. This is where we're at. Really clear messaging. Or the coaches will message down and go, hey, what's the resets for this player? So it just allows really in the moment communication. And if they get to a point where they're like, we don't want you on the bench, then you go.
Yeah.
So I think it's all got to be player driven.
Because I also think there's a lack of sympathy for errors at the highest level, and when it's happening, and particularly when you're a young kid or whatever, you've got to like bounce back and come back into the game. That's where I thought your role would be fantastic, just to level set and bring them back to like that moment doesn't define you. Still 3 quarters left or whatever there is,
Sport needs to get over the fact that an error is a bad thing.
No, and especially in AFL, like it's a very tough game to go through without having any errors. Like there's 44 people on the pitch.
And there are people coming at you from every single, it's played on the ground, it's played at standing, it's played in the air, and people can come from 360. Like, are you kidding me that there's not going to be any errors?
Yeah.
Because there is no time sometimes to process. This is why they have to work so much off their gut, is because there isn't that thinking time. So you're able to say, mate, there's nothing else you could have done there.
Yeah.
But an error is not a bad thing. I know it can be frustrating, but it's going to happen. Let's embrace it. Let's understand it, and then let's move on from it.
Correct. Do you think if the public and the sporting sort of public and fan base of, the AFL, for example, if we saw some of your conversations you were having with certain players and people, our whole view and perception of the game would change?
Yep.
And how we
It would
cheer,
humanize the athletes. I think it would also it would stop a lot of the shit on Twitter and the social media forums where people have these opinions. Oh, he doesn't care. Well, I wish you could hear our conversation during the match because he definitely cares. There's not a single elite athlete out there that doesn't care.
No.
Like, I'm sorry, those
even if they say
ignorant
they don't,
comments.
when they get tackled or when something happens, then their pride's on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. Or he just needs to pull his head in and this and that. Oh, okay. Well, it's that easy because you've played 300 games yourself.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, come and tell us. So I think it would teach people to go, we are on top of this as much as is humanly possible. But it would also be, people find it fascinating. There's a fascination with what goes on at the top level.
Yeah.
And we're getting more and more detailed in it, and the
we
humans.
get elements of it in the podcast.
Yeah.
But we don't, your levels of a different world.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to hear the conversations.
Well, yeah, I know, but I just think if people had insight into some of the real stuff that people go through in that world, and then they're like, you'd be like, how the fuck is this guy running out on, Amy Park or MCG or, wherever the Gabba on this weekend, like if he's gone through that stuff.
It's also the stuff that would distract, like people don't realise, if a player gets reported, that plays on their mind.
Yeah.
Some don't worry about it and they can get on with the game, but they're straight after the game, they're worried like, oh, I'm potentially not going to be here next week for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And they want to play, they want to compete. So it would help people understand that, you know what, they care, they do give a shit about stuff, they worry about stuff, they're humans.
Do you think the generation of elite athletes now probably miss the boat of like brain training through their teens to prepare for this sort of world? Or do you think, because I feel like now it's like a lot of, like one of my biggest regrets was not training my brain as much as I did my physical body, because all this stuff was thrown at me and my brain and ego didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And like I felt like my ability was here, but if I was honest, like this was down here.
Yeah.
But is that the same for everyone, or is that changing now? Like,
athletes are better at it than coaches. So I think previously what's happened, certainly at the start of my career, what I found was coaches got very concerned that you were getting closer to their athletes than they were, and that you knew stuff. And I don't think they understood that what I was trying to do was complement what they were doing.
yeah.
Like, I'm in alignment. I'm not going to go and tell our players to do something that is out of our system.
Correct.
That I'm not a coach, so I'm not telling them how to play their systems and all that sort of stuff. I'm telling them how to cope within that system.
Right, okay.
So I think they haven't missed the boat, because if you do it frequently enough, like we can upskill you pretty quickly in that. But I think some of the coaches still need to come on board with, this is actually, sports psych for the coaches is super helpful.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones, their relationship with the athlete is the most important.
Okay.
So they need to know how to communicate. They're not trained in this. We train for 10 years plus to do this.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, I've got 4 degrees and have to do PD every single year. That costs me thousands of dollars to be able to learn this. And I train this because I'm talking it every day. I don't expect a coach to know what I know, but I do expect if there's a resource there where they can help their player and help themselves and control their own emotion, understand the impact you have on your player, get the skills yourself. Then all of a sudden you'll get more out of your players.
Right, okay.
Like if I do my job really well, there's an element of it I can basically make myself somewhat redundant.
Right.
Like I don't need to do that anymore. The coaches have learnt it. They can do it. Great. I can just now deal with this stuff.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I'll do myself out of a job.
Yeah,
See how we go.
don't do that. We need you in there. But you know what? We're going to round this out because I know we're near at time, but this is going to be fun because this is some of the questions we've got from the listeners.
Okay.
So some are a bit deep, some are interesting for me, and some are just a bit funny as well. But one was, how do you be alone without being lonely?
So being alone is just a physical state. I'm in this room on my own. Loneliness is a feeling. So, yeah, if you're feeling something, you could be in a crowd of 1,000 people.
And still feel lonely.
Because you don't feel you're connected to anybody. So connection is the biggest thing for loneliness.
Okay, so building connection, trying to find connection.
That's why COVID had so many mental health concerns.
Yeah, because
people were isolated. Yeah, we've got like 500,000 people in Victoria that live on their own, and they were not allowed to go and see somebody until 9 months in. The government went, oh, hang on a second. Yeah. They should probably see somebody.
Yeah, okay.
No shit.
You. This for me is an interesting one, but who does a psychologist go to see when they need help?
A psychologist.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a network. I have a really great network of amazing psychologists, and we're really supportive of each other. Or you'll use your own personal networks. Like,
but is it like a rule? Like, even though you could probably identify what's going on, would you still not see yourself? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like a rule.
It's a really good question.
You don't go to your own knowledge and known headspace when it's about you.
So your ability to self-manage is probably pretty good, but the higher the emotion, the less the clarity.
Right.
So I'm going to be emotional because it's my life. So I need someone who's not emotional to be able to see things that I may not see.
Right.
So it's so important that a psychologist has a supervisor constantly through your career, and you have an amazing group of peers that you can debrief with.
Okay. Now this one is, I don't know if this is to like a family or a relationship or something like that, but best way to let go of like an attachment that, like, I don't know, some sort of loving attachment was the way it was framed.
Okay. So grieving is really important.
Right.
People try and rush through and go, I'll just keep myself busy. No, it's okay to grieve. So acknowledge it, grieve it, get someone to help you through that grieving process. Let's find out where that fitted for you in your life and why it's so hard to let go of. Like, by letting go of it, what do you think that means for you? Oh, it's forgetting that person. No, it's not. It's not. You'll never forget that person. You don't stop loving someone because they passed away or whatever, or if you really love that job and you lost it. Let's grieve first and then let's move through.
Gotcha.
People try and avoid the grief and the uncomfortable emotions. I always say to people, sit in the shit. It stinks. You'll sit there for a little while and then you'll move on when you're sick of the smell.
Okay, got you. Interesting. Now, I don't know if this one's excuse me, I don't know if this one's targeted at you for like what you do, or just a general thing, but when you're down and struggling, what do you fall back onto to get yourself ahead?
So number one, you'd go back to your strengths. If you're an athlete, go back to your strengths. If it's you as a human being, go to your people, and go to the things that make you feel like you. So for me, I've got to put music, swimming. I just find peace when I'm around the water. So going to the beach, around the pool, all that sort of stuff. So find the things that make you feel you.
Okay.
Right? Might be simple foods. It might be just have a doona day and just watch a whole day of like Friends if that's your favourite show. Humour is really, really helpful.
Okay.
But know what makes you you and don't be afraid to go to it.
Jacqui Lowder, you just nailed this one out of the park again.
No problem.
They're one of the best sports psychologists, or psychologists for that matter, in this country. You're wonderful to talk to. One of the most sort of shows that I've been looking forward to because of the feedback we've been getting in between the last one around like this topic. So I feel like you're going to be a bit more of a regular guest because
I'm happy to.
Because people love hearing about it. I think it actually helps them. So thank you very much.
No worries. You're welcome.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.